Lisa had always dreamed of living on a ranch. After working 2 jobs for 12 years and saving every penny she could, she finally bought her piece of heaven in 2009. The 40-acre property sat on a quiet country road, surrounded by rolling hills and old oak trees that had been there longer than anyone could remember. The ranch house wasn't fancy, but it had character. Built in the 1950s, it had a wraparound porch where Lisa loved to drink her morning coffee while watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and pink. She spent her first year fixing up the place, painting the barn bright red, mending fences, and turning the overgrown pastures back into something beautiful. By 2015, Lisa had everything she wanted. 3 horses grazed peacefully in the front pasture, and a small herd of cattle roamed the back fields. She grew her own vegetables, raised chickens for fresh eggs, and even had a few goats that followed her around like loyal dogs. Neighbors, who lived miles away, would wave when they drove past, and the mailman always stopped to chat about the weather. Life was simple and good. Lisa worked remotely for an accounting firm, which gave her the freedom to tend to her animals and property during the day. In the evenings, she'd sit on her porch, listening to the sounds of country life, horses nickering, cattle lowing in, the distance and the peaceful silence that city folks never get to experience. Everything changed in late 2020 when construction crews showed up on the land next to her property. Lisa watched with curiosity as they cleared trees and began building what looked like a fancy neighborhood. The development was called Meadowbrook Hills, and the houses going up were nothing like the simple ranch homes scattered throughout the area. These were big, expensive-looking houses with perfectly manicured lawns and 3-car garages. At first, Lisa didn't mind the new neighbors. She even looked forward to having people closer by. The construction was noisy during the day, but she understood that progress sometimes meant change. She figured once the building was done, things would settle back to normal. The first families moved into Meadowbrook Hills in spring 2021. Lisa noticed they drove fancy cars and their yards looked like something out of a magazine. She waved when she saw them, but most didn't wave back. Some even seemed to stare at her property with strange expressions like they disapproved of something. One morning in June, Lisa found an envelope in her mailbox that would change everything. The return address read, Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association Management Company. Lisa frowned as she opened it, wondering why an HOA would be writing to her. The letter was typed on official-looking letterhead and written in language that sounded like it came from a law office. It started politely enough, welcoming her to the Meadowbrook Hills community. But as Lisa read further, her confusion turned to disbelief. According to the letter, her ranch property had been incorporated into the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association, effective immediately. The letter listed dozens of rules she was now required to follow, including restrictions on the types and number of animals allowed on residential properties, regulations about building colors and maintenance, and requirements for lawn care and landscaping. Lisa read the letter 3 times, sure she was missing something. How could her ranch, which had existed for decades before Meadowbrook Hills was even planned, suddenly be part of their homeowners association? She had never signed any documents, attended any meetings, or agreed to join anything. The letter concluded with a demand for immediate payment of $2,400 in back dues and assessments, plus a monthly fee of $150 going forward. It also informed her that several violations had already been noted on her property, including non-compliant agricultural activities and structures painted in unauthorized colors. Lisa's hands shook as she set the letter down. This had to be a mistake. She grabbed her phone and called the management company number listed on the letterhead. Meadowbrook Hills HOA, this is Jennifer speaking. How can I help you? The voice was cheerful and professional. Hi, there's been some kind of mistake, Lisa began, trying to keep her voice calm. I received a letter saying my property is part of your homeowners association, but that's impossible. I've owned my ranch for over 10 years and I never agreed to join any HOA. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Can I get your property address, please? Lisa gave her address and waited while Jennifer looked up her information. I'm showing here that your property at 1847 County Road 15 was incorporated into the Meadowbrook Hills HOA in 2018. According to our records, you attended the community meeting where this was voted on and agreed to the inclusion. That's completely wrong, Lisa said, her voice rising. I was never at any meeting. I don't even know what you're talking about. My property has been a ranch for decades. There must be some kind of mix-up. Jennifer's tone became less friendly. Ma'am, I understand you might not remember the meeting, but our records are very clear. Your property is legally bound by our covenants, conditions, and restrictions. The violations noted in your letter need to be addressed within 30 days, or additional fines will be assessed. What violations? I haven't violated anything. This is my ranch. According to the site inspection conducted last week, you have livestock on a residential property, which is prohibited under Section 4.2 of our CCRs. You also have agricultural structures painted in non-approved colors, specifically a red barn, which violates our architectural standards. Lisa felt like she was living in some kind of nightmare. My barn has been red since before your development even existed, and these aren't violations. This is a working ranch. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but the rules apply to all properties within the association boundaries. I'd recommend you review the documents that were provided to you when your property was included in the HOA. I never received any documents because I never joined your HOA. Jennifer sighed audibly. I'm going to transfer you to our legal department. They can explain your obligations under the covenants. The legal department was even less helpful. A.O. man with a stern voice informed Lisa that her property was legally bound by the HOA's rules, regardless of when she purchased it or whether she remembered agreeing to it. He explained that property records clearly showed her inclusion in the association, and that failure to comply with the rules could result in liens being placed on her property. Lisa hung up, feeling sick to her stomach. She spent the rest of the day poring over every document related to her property purchase, looking for any mention of a homeowners association. She found nothing. Her deed was clear, her title was clean, and nowhere in any of her paperwork was there any reference to HOA covenants or restrictions. That evening, Lisa drove over to Meadowbrook Hills to see if she could talk to someone in person. The neighborhood was beautiful in an artificial way, with houses that all looked similar and yards that seemed to be maintained by professional landscaping crews. She found the HOA office in a small building near the entrance and knocked on the door, but it was locked with a sign saying, "Office hours, by appointment only." Over the next few days, Lisa tried calling the HOA office multiple times, but no one answered. She left messages that were never returned. The stress was keeping her up at night, and she found herself constantly checking her mailbox, dreading what might arrive next. 2 weeks later, another letter came. This time it was a formal violation notice with photos attached. Someone had come onto her property and taken pictures of her barn, her horses, her chicken coop, and even her vegetable garden. The letter listed 15 separate violations and imposed fines totaling $3,200. Lisa stared at the photos of her beautiful, well-maintained property being described as violations and eyesores. Her peaceful ranch life was being turned upside down by people who had no right to control what she did on her own land. She knew she needed help, but she had no idea where to start. All Lisa knew was that she wouldn't let anyone take away the life she had worked so hard to build. Lisa decided to fight back the only way she knew how, by ignoring the ridiculous demands. She crumpled up the violation notice and threw it in the trash. Her ranch was her property, and no made-up homeowners association was going to tell her what to do with it. But the HOA wasn't giving up that easily. Every Tuesday morning, like clockwork, a new envelope appeared in her mailbox. Each letter brought more violations, higher fines, and increasingly threatening language. They complained about everything. Her horses were too close to the property. Her chicken coop was an unsightly structure, and her vegetable garden was non-conforming landscaping. The most ridiculous violation came in August. Someone had actually measured the height of her grass in the front pasture and determined it exceeded HOA standards by 3 inches. They wanted her to mow her pasture like it was a suburban lawn. Lisa laughed out loud when she read that one, but her laughter quickly turned to anger when she saw the $500 fine attached. By September, the letters claimed she owed over $8,000 in fines and fees. Lisa had started a folder just to keep track of all the nonsense they were sending her. She showed the letters to her neighbor Tom, whose ranch was 2 miles down the road. "This is crazy, Lisa," Tom said, shaking his head as he read through the violations. "I've been ranching here for 30 years and I've never seen anything like this. You sure you never signed anything?" "I'm positive, Tom. I've gone through every single piece of paper from when I bought this place. There's nothing about any HOA." "Well, they can't just declare your property part of their association. That's not how property law works." Tom handed the letters back to her. "Maybe you should talk to a lawyer." Lisa had been thinking the same thing, but lawyers cost money she didn't have. The ranch provided a comfortable living, but she wasn't wealthy. Still, the situation was getting out of hand. In October, things took a disturbing turn. Lisa was feeding her horses one morning when she noticed a white sedan parked on the road near her driveway. A man in a suit was taking pictures of her property, with a professional-looking camera. When he saw her watching, he quickly got in his car and drove away. The next week, it happened again. This time it was a woman with a clipboard who was walking along her fence line, writing notes and taking more pictures. When Lisa called out to ask what she was doing, the woman hurried to a black SUV and sped off. "They're documenting everything," Lisa told Tom when she called him that evening. "It's like they're building a case against me." "For what? Living on your own property?" "I don't know, but it's making me nervous. Yesterday, I caught someone measuring the distance from my barn to the property line. When I went outside to confront them, they claimed they were from the county assessor's office, but they wouldn't show me any ID." The harassment was starting to affect Lisa's daily life. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering who might be watching her. She installed a security camera at her front gate and another one pointed at the barn, just to have some record of what was happening. In November, Lisa received a letter that made her blood run cold. It wasn't from the management company this time. It was from a law firm called Peterson, Bradley and Associates. The letter informed her that the Meadowbrook Hills HOA was prepared to place a lien on her property for unpaid assessments and fines, totaling $12,400. Lisa's hands were shaking as she read the legal language. The letter gave her 30 days to pay the full amount or face foreclosure proceedings. They were actually threatening to take her ranch away from her. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about all the years she had worked to buy this place, all the love and effort she had put into making it her home. The idea that some group of strangers could just take it away from her was terrifying. The next morning brought an even worse shock. Lisa walked out to feed her horses and stopped dead in her tracks. Someone had spray-painted HOA violation in large red letters across the front of her barn. The beautiful red paint she had carefully applied was now defaced with ugly graffiti. But that wasn't all. As Lisa walked around her property in disbelief, she discovered more damage. Someone had dumped 3 bags of garbage along her fence line. Her mailbox had been knocked over and was lying in the ditch. Worst of all, her irrigation system for the vegetable garden had been deliberately damaged. Pipes were cut and sprinkler heads were smashed. Lisa sat down on her porch steps and cried. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was vandalism and destruction of her property. Someone had come onto her land in the middle of the night and deliberately tried to hurt her. She called the sheriff's department and filed a report. Deputy Rodriguez was sympathetic, but not very encouraging. "I'll write up the report, ma'am, but without witnesses or fingerprints, there's not much we can do. Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "I think it's connected to this HOA dispute I'm having," Lisa explained, showing him some of the letters. Deputy Rodriguez looked through the correspondence and frowned. "This is a civil matter, ma'am. We can't get involved in HOA disputes, but the vandalism is definitely a crime. I'd recommend you install more security cameras and call us immediately if you see anyone on your property." After the deputy left, Lisa spent the morning cleaning up the damage. The spray paint wouldn't come off the barn without a lot of scrubbing and probably a new coat of paint. The irrigation repairs would cost hundreds of dollars, but the emotional damage was worse than the physical destruction. That afternoon, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the law firm that had sent the lien threat. "Ms. Johnson, this is David Peterson from Peterson, Bradley and Associates. I'm calling regarding your outstanding obligations to the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. My property was just vandalized, Lisa said, her voice shaking with anger. Someone spray-painted my barn and destroyed my irrigation system. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm calling about a legal matter. Our client has authorized us to proceed with lien proceedings unless your account is brought current within 15 days. I don't owe your client anything. I'm not part of their HOA. Ma'am, that's not what our records show. Your property has been subject to HOA covenants since 2018, and you've repeatedly failed to comply with community standards. The vandalism you mentioned is likely a result of your property being maintained below community standards. Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Are you suggesting that I deserve to have my property vandalized? I'm not suggesting anything, ma'am. I'm simply informing you that properties that don't meet community standards often attract unwanted attention. Perhaps if you brought your property into compliance, these issues would resolve themselves. The lawyer's tone was cold and threatening. Lisa realized this wasn't just about HOA rules. This was about forcing her off her property. Someone wanted her ranch, and they were willing to destroy her life to get it. After hanging up, Lisa made a decision. She couldn't fight this alone anymore. She needed help, and she needed it fast. Her peaceful ranch life had turned into a nightmare, but she wasn't going to give up without a fight. Lisa picked up the phone and started calling every lawyer in the county. Someone had to be willing to help her save her home. Finding a lawyer turned out to be harder than Lisa expected. The first 3 attorneys she called said they didn't handle HOA disputes. The fourth one wanted a $5,000 retainer just to look at her case. Lisa was starting to feel hopeless when she finally reached Attorney Rodriguez at a small practice in the next town over. I've seen cases like this before, Attorney Rodriguez said during their first phone call. HOAs sometimes try to expand their boundaries illegally. Can you bring me all the paperwork you have? Lisa gathered every document related to her property, purchase, and drove to the lawyer's office the next day. Attorney Rodriguez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened carefully as Lisa explained everything that had happened. This doesn't make sense, the lawyer said after reviewing Lisa's deed and title documents. There's no mention of any HOA covenants anywhere in your paperwork. When did you say they claimed you joined? They said 2018, and that I attended some meeting where it was voted on. But I swear I never went to any meeting. Attorney Rodriguez pulled out the HOA documents that Lisa had received and spread them across her desk. She put on her reading glasses and studied them carefully. After several minutes, she looked up with a frown. Lisa, I need to ask you something important. Is this your signature? She pointed to a document titled Property Inclusion Agreement, dated March 15, 2018. Lisa looked at the signature and felt her stomach drop. It looked like her handwriting, but something felt wrong about it. It looks like mine, but I don't remember signing this. I definitely never agreed to join any HOA. The signature looks authentic at first glance, but there are some things that bother me about this document. Attorney Rodriguez pointed to several areas on the paper. See how the ink color is slightly different here? And look at the way your L is formed. It's not quite consistent with other examples of your signature. Lisa leaned closer to examine the document. Now that the lawyer pointed it out, she could see the differences. The signature looked like hers, but it wasn't quite right. Are you saying someone forged my signature? I'm saying this document needs to be examined by a handwriting expert. But first, let me do some research into this HOA and see what I can find. Over the next 2 weeks, Attorney Rodriguez dug deep into the Meadowbrook Hills HOA records. What she discovered was shocking. She called Lisa with her findings on a Tuesday morning. Lisa, you need to sit down for this. I found some very disturbing information about your HOA situation. What did you find? First, the good news. I'm confident that signature is forged. I had a handwriting expert examine it, and she's certain it's not authentic. But that's just the beginning. I've discovered that the HOA has been systematically targeting several long-term property owners in your area. Lisa felt a mix of relief and anger. So I was right. I never signed anything. Correct, but it gets worse. I found records showing that 3 other ranch owners in your area have sold their properties to the same development company in the past 2 years. All 3 were facing similar HOA harassment. The same company that built Meadowbrook Hills? Exactly. It's called Sunrise Development Corporation. And here's the interesting part. 2 of the current HOA board members have financial ties to Sunrise Development. Lisa felt sick. So this is all a scheme to steal people's property? It appears that way. I also discovered that the property, surveys they're using to claim your ranch as part of their HOA boundaries have been altered. The original county surveys show your property is clearly outside their development area. The lawyer explained that she had found falsified meeting minutes claiming Lisa had attended HOA meetings that never actually happened. There were even fake voting records showing her approval for various HOA initiatives. How is this legal? How? Can they get away with this? They can't once we prove it. But Lisa, this is a big case. These people have committed serious crimes: forgery, fraud, possibly extortion. We're not just fighting an HOA dispute anymore. We're looking at criminal activity. Attorney Rodriguez recommended that Lisa file a police report about the forged documents, but she warned that it would be a long fight. These people have money and resources they're not going to give up easily. That same week, Lisa's security cameras captured something that made her blood run cold. At 2:30 in the morning, 2 figures dressed in dark clothing climbed over her fence and spent 20 minutes walking around her property with flashlights. They took photos of her barn, her house, and even counted her livestock. Lisa called the sheriff's department immediately, but by the time deputies arrived, the intruders were gone. The security footage was too dark to identify the people, but it was clear they were conducting some kind of surveillance. They're planning something, Lisa told Attorney Rodriguez when she shared the video. This feels bigger than just trying to get me to pay fake fines. The lawyer's investigation had revealed just how big. She discovered that Sunrise Development had been quietly purchasing ranch properties throughout the county, always after the owners had been harassed by mysterious HOA problems. The pattern was always the same: forge documents to claim the property was part of an HOA, harass the owners with violations and fines, then make a generous offer to buy the property to resolve the dispute. 3 families have already fallen for this scheme, Attorney Rodriguez explained. They sold their properties for far less than market value just to escape the harassment. Lisa learned that her 40-acre ranch was worth nearly $800,000, but Sunrise Development had been purchasing similar properties for around $400,000 after wearing down the owners with legal battles and constant stress. They're not just stealing property, Lisa realized. They're stealing people's life savings. The most disturbing discovery came when Attorney Rodriguez found emails between HOA board members discussing Lisa's case. The emails had been accidentally included in public records filed with the county, and they revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. One email from HOA President Janet Williams to board member Mike Stevens read, "The Johnson property is the key piece we need for the golf course development. Keep pressure on her until she breaks. Everyone has a breaking point." Another email discussed hiring contractors to document violations on Lisa's property, the same contractors who had been trespassing and taking photos. But the most damaging evidence was an email chain discussing the forged signature. Board member Stevens had written, "The inclusion documents look good. No one will question a signature that old. By the time she figures out what's happening, we'll have a lien on the property." Attorney Rodriguez was furious when she read the emails. "Lisa, these people aren't just criminals. They're arrogant criminals. They documented their own crimes in writing." The lawyer explained that they now had enough evidence to not only defend against the HOA's claims, but to go on the offensive. "We're going to sue them for fraud, conspiracy, trespassing, harassment, and emotional distress. And I'm going to push for criminal charges." Lisa felt a surge of hope for the first time in months. Can we really beat them? With evidence like this? We're not just going to beat them, Lisa. We're going to destroy their entire operation and make sure they never do this to anyone else. But Attorney Rodriguez warned that the fight was just beginning. They've invested too much in this scheme to give up now. Once they realize we've discovered their fraud, they're going to escalate their tactics. We need to be prepared for them, to get desperate. Lisa looked at the emails and forged documents spread across the lawyer's desk. Her peaceful ranch life had been turned upside down by criminals who thought they could steal her property with fake paperwork and intimidation. "Let them get desperate," Lisa said, her voice steady with determination. "I'm ready to fight." Attorney Rodriguez wasn't kidding when she said the HOA would escalate their tactics. 3 days after Lisa met with her lawyer, she received a certified letter that made her heart stop. The Meadowbrook Hills HOA was suing her for $127,000 in unpaid fines, legal fees, and damages. They were demanding immediate foreclosure on her ranch. "They're trying to force a quick sale before we can expose their fraud," Attorney Rodriguez explained when Lisa called her in a panic. "This is exactly what I expected them to do." The lawsuit papers were thick and filled with legal language that Lisa barely understood. But the message was clear. They wanted her ranch, and they wanted it now. The documents claimed she had willfully violated HOA covenants for years, and that her blatant disregard for community standards had damaged property values throughout Meadowbrook Hills. Lisa couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about losing everything she had worked for. Her ranch wasn't just her home. It was her entire life. The thought of being forced to sell to the same criminals who had forged her signature made her sick. But Attorney Rodriguez had a plan. The next morning, she filed a counter-lawsuit against the HOA, Sunrise Development Corporation, and several individual board members. Lisa's lawsuit sought $2.3 million in damages for fraud, harassment, property damage, and emotional distress. "We're not playing defense anymore," the lawyer told Lisa. "We're going on the attack." The legal discovery process began immediately. Both sides had the right to request documents and evidence from each other. Attorney Rodriguez demanded bank records, email communications, meeting minutes, and financial documents from the HOA and Sunrise Development. What they discovered during discovery was even worse than Lisa had imagined. The fraud scheme had been going on for over 3 years and involved at least 12 properties. Sunrise Development had made over $4 million in profits by purchasing ranch land for half its value after forcing owners into legal battles they couldn't afford. "Look at this," Attorney Rodriguez said, showing Lisa a stack of bank records. "The HOA board members have been receiving payments from Sunrise Development throughout this entire process. They're not volunteers serving their community. They're paid employees of the development company." The evidence kept getting worse. Discovery revealed that the same law firm representing the HOA also had Sunrise Development as a client. The lawyers had been sharing strategy and information between both cases, which was a serious ethical violation. Lisa learned that HOA President Janet Williams owned stock in Sunrise Development worth over $200,000. Board member Mike Stevens had been hired as a consultant by the development company and was being paid $5,000 per month. The entire HOA board was financially motivated to steal her property. But the most shocking discovery came from the development company's own internal documents. Sunrise Development had conducted surveys of all the ranch properties in the area and identified Lisa's land as essential for their planned golf course and resort development. Her 40 acres sat right in the middle of what they wanted to build. "They've been planning this for years," Attorney Rodriguez explained. "Your property is the centerpiece of a $50 million development project. That's why they're so desperate to get it." The case attracted attention from local media when news leaked about the forged documents and the broader fraud scheme. A reporter from the county newspaper interviewed Lisa about her experience. "I just want people to know what these criminals are doing," Lisa told the reporter. "They're not just targeting me. They're destroying families and stealing people's life savings." The story ran on the front page with the headline, "Local HOA accused of massive property fraud scheme." Within hours, Lisa's phone started ringing. 3 other property owners called to say they had experienced similar harassment from HOAs connected to Sunrise Development. "We thought we were the only ones," said Carol Martinez, whose family ranch had been targeted 2 years earlier. "They made our lives so miserable that we finally sold just to escape the constant stress. Now I realize we were robbed." Attorney Rodriguez was thrilled to hear from the other victims. "This strengthens our case enormously. We can show this is an ongoing criminal enterprise, not just a dispute over HOA rules. Meanwhile, the harassment against Lisa intensified. Someone spray-painted profanity on her barn doors. Her mailbox was destroyed 3 more times. Most disturbing of all, she started receiving anonymous phone calls at all hours of the night with threatening messages. "You should have taken our offer when you had the chance," one caller said. "Things are going to get much worse for you." Lisa installed additional security cameras and changed her phone number, but the stress was taking its toll. She lost 15 pounds and started having trouble sleeping. Her horses seemed to sense her anxiety and were more skittish than usual. The legal battle became a war of attrition. The HOA's lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to delay the case and drain Lisa's resources. They demanded depositions from Lisa, her neighbors, and even her veterinarian. Every legal action cost money that Lisa didn't have. "They're trying to bankrupt you before we get to trial," Attorney Rodriguez explained. "This is a common tactic in cases like this." Fortunately, the lawyer had agreed to take Lisa's case on contingency, meaning she only got paid if they won. But there were still court costs, expert witness fees, and investigation expenses that Lisa had to cover. Just when Lisa thought things couldn't get worse, she received devastating news. The HOA had convinced a judge to grant a preliminary injunction against her property. Lisa was prohibited from making any changes to her ranch and was required to place her livestock in temporary alternative housing until the case was resolved. "They can't take my animals away," Lisa cried when Attorney Rodriguez called with the news. "Those horses have been with me for 10 years. This is their home." The lawyer was furious. The judge who signed this injunction didn't understand the case. "We're going to appeal immediately, but in the meantime, you might have to board your horses somewhere else." Lisa couldn't afford to board 3 horses indefinitely. Her neighbor Tom offered to help, but his pastures were already full. The HOA had succeeded in making her ranch operation financially impossible to maintain. The stress finally broke Lisa one evening in late November. She was sitting on her porch, looking at the foreclosure notice that had arrived that morning, when she started sobbing uncontrollably. Everything she had worked for was being destroyed by people who had never met her and didn't care about her life. But that same evening, Attorney Rodriguez called with news that changed everything. "Lisa, we just received the HOA's email records from Discovery. You're not going to believe what we found." The lawyer had discovered email conversations between HOA board members and Sunrise Development executives discussing the Lisa Johnson problem and how to accelerate the timeline for acquiring her property. Even more damaging, they found emails discussing payments to local contractors for property surveillance and documentation services. "They were paying people to trespass on your property and vandalize it," Attorney Rodriguez said. "We have them dead to rights on criminal conspiracy charges." The smoking gun came in an email from Sunrise Development CEO Robert Chen to HOA President Janet Williams. "The Johnson property acquisition is critical to our project timeline. Whatever it takes to force a sale, do it. We're prepared to increase your compensation package accordingly." Lisa felt a surge of hope for the first time in weeks. "Does this mean we can prove they're criminals?" "Lisa, this doesn't just prove they're criminals. This proves they're stupid criminals who documented their crimes in writing. We're going to destroy them in court." The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. A former Sunrise Development employee contacted Attorney Rodriguez with internal company documents showing the true value of Lisa's property. According to the company's own appraisals, her 40-acre ranch was worth $1.2 million as part of their resort development. They were planning to steal property worth over $1 million for a few $100,000, the lawyer explained. This is grand theft on a massive scale. As 2022 began, Lisa prepared for the fight of her life. The trial was set for March, and she was ready to expose the criminals who had tried to steal her ranch. The trial began on March 15, 2022, exactly 4 years after the forged document that started this nightmare. Lisa sat in the courthouse wearing her best dress, her hands shaking as she watched the HOA's team of expensive lawyers file into the courtroom. There were 5 of them, all wearing $1,000 suits and carrying briefcases that probably cost more than Lisa made in a month. Judge Thompson was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Lisa felt a little better when he smiled at her before calling the court to order. Attorney Rodriguez had told her that Judge Thompson had a reputation for being fair and didn't like lawyers who tried to intimidate people. The HOA's lead attorney, Mr. Harrison, stood up first to present their case. He was tall and spoke in a loud, confident voice that filled the courtroom. He painted Lisa as a stubborn property owner who refused to follow simple community rules and had cost the HOA thousands of dollars in legal fees. Your Honor, the defendant has willfully violated community standards for years, Harrison declared. She signed the covenants in 2018 and has repeatedly ignored her obligations to the community. Lisa wanted to jump up and shout that she never signed anything, but Attorney Rodriguez had told her to stay calm and let the evidence speak for itself. When it was Attorney Rodriguez's turn, she walked to the front of the courtroom with a thick folder of documents. She spoke quietly, but every word was clear and powerful. Your Honor, what we have here is not an HOA dispute. What we have here is the largest property fraud scheme this county has ever seen. She started by presenting the forged signature evidence. The handwriting expert, Dr. Patricia Wells, took the witness stand and explained in simple terms how she could tell the signature was fake. The pressure patterns are wrong, Dr. Wells testified, pointing to enlarged photos of Lisa's real signature, compared to the forged one. The person who forged the signature was trying to copy the appearance, but they couldn't replicate the natural hand movements that create an authentic signature. The courtroom was dead silent as Dr. Wells showed slide after slide proving the forgery. Even the HOA's lawyers looked uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. But the real bombshell came when Attorney Rodriguez called former Sunrise Development employee Kevin Park to the witness stand. Kevin had been the company's project manager until his conscience got the better of him and he quit. I couldn't be part of what they were doing anymore, Kevin testified. They had a whole system for targeting ranch properties. They would research the owners, find out their financial situations, then create fake HOA problems to force them to sell. Kevin revealed that Sunrise Development had a map in their conference room with all the targeted properties marked in red. Lisa's ranch was marked with a gold star and labeled Priority Acquisition. Why was Mrs. Johnson's property marked as priority? Attorney Rodriguez asked. Because it's the centerpiece of their resort development. Without her land, the entire $50 million project falls apart. The HOA's lawyers objected repeatedly, but Judge Thompson overruled them every time. The evidence was too clear to ignore. The most dramatic moment came when Attorney Rodriguez presented the emails between HOA board members and Sunrise Development. She read them aloud in the courtroom, and with each email, the HOA's case crumbled. Further, when she read the email about whatever it takes to force a sale, several people in the courtroom gasped. Judge Thompson's expression grew darker as he listened to the evidence of criminal conspiracy. HOA President Janet Williams was called to testify in her own defense. She was a well-dressed woman in her 50s who clearly thought she was smarter than everyone else in the room. That confidence disappeared quickly under Attorney Rodriguez's questioning. Ms. Williams, did you receive payments from Sunrise Development Corporation while serving as HOA president? I received consulting fees for legitimate services, Williams answered stiffly. What services did you provide for $5,000 per month? Williams hesitated. Strategic planning and community development advice. Attorney Rodriguez showed her the bank records. According to these deposits, you received $180,000 over 3 years. Can you explain what strategic planning advice was worth that much money? Williams couldn't answer. Her face turned red as she realized her lies were being exposed in front of everyone. The prosecution of board member Mike Stevens was even more devastating. He tried to deny everything, but Attorney Rodriguez had his emails and bank records showing payments from Sunrise Development. Mr. Stevens, did you hire contractors to conduct surveillance on Lisa Johnson's property? I don't recall, Stevens mumbled. Let me refresh your memory. Attorney Rodriguez showed him an email he had written. You sent this message saying, get me detailed photos of every violation on the Johnson property. Make sure to document everything we can use against her. Does that help your memory? Stevens's lawyer tried to object, but the evidence was too clear. Stevens had personally organized the harassment campaign against Lisa. The final nail in the coffin came when attorney Rodriguez revealed the security camera footage showing two people vandalizing Lisa's property. The video was grainy, but it clearly showed two figures spray painting the barn and damaging the irrigation system. Your Honor, we've enhanced this footage using professional video analysis, attorney Rodriguez announced. The two individuals can now be identified. The enhanced video clearly showed Mike Stevens and another HOA board member destroying Lisa's property. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs as people realized they were watching board members committing crimes on camera. Judge Thompson called for order and looked disgusted as he watched the video evidence. The HOA's defense completely fell apart. Their lawyers tried to argue that any misconduct was the action of individual board members, not the HOA itself. But attorney Rodriguez showed that the entire organization was corrupt from top to bottom. After 6 days of testimony, Judge Thompson didn't need long to make his decision. He called the court back into session on Friday afternoon and delivered a verdict that shocked everyone. In 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such a clear case of organized fraud and criminal conspiracy, Judge Thompson began. The evidence shows that the defendants engaged in a systematic scheme to defraud property owners through forged documents, harassment, and intimidation. The judge voided all HOA claims against Lisa's property and awarded her $1.8 million in damages. But he wasn't finished. Furthermore, I am ordering the immediate dissolution of the Meadowbrook Hills HOA and referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Lisa burst into tears of relief as attorney Rodriguez hugged her. 3 years of hell were finally over. Within hours of the verdict, the FBI arrived to arrest Janet Williams, Mike Stevens, and 2 other board members for fraud and conspiracy. The local news covered their arrest on the evening broadcast, showing them in handcuffs being led away from their expensive homes. Sunrise Development Corporation filed for bankruptcy the next week when several other fraud victims came forward with similar lawsuits. The $50 million resort project was canceled, and the company's executives faced federal charges. Lisa used part of her settlement money to buy an additional 60 acres adjacent to her ranch, ensuring that no one could ever threaten her property again. She also established a legal defense fund to help other property owners fight HOA fraud. 6 months later, Lisa was back to her peaceful ranch life. Her horses grazed contentedly in the expanded pastures, and her vegetable garden was bigger than ever. The red barn had been repainted and looked beautiful again. Sometimes visitors would stop by to hear her story. Lisa always ended by telling them the same thing. Never let anyone bully you off your own property. If you're right and you fight hard enough, justice will win. The criminals who tried to steal her ranch were now in federal prison, and Lisa's ranch was safe forever. She had not only saved her home, she had stopped a criminal organization from hurting anyone else. As Lisa sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, just like she had years ago before this nightmare began, she smiled. Her ranch was truly home again.